Let's talk about SIPOC. What is SIPOC, you say? Nope, it's not the name of someone from a Star Trek movie. Actually, I bet many of you that are in the continuous improvement space already know, but for those of you that don't, let's just do a quick review. And for those of you that do, I want to talk a little bit about how and when I use SIPOC and maybe get you to give me a little bit of how you use SIPOC. So the basic answer to SIPOC is it is a process mapping, a process understanding methodology. SIPOC is an acronym. It stands for, and you can see it right here on the screen, suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, customers. What we're trying to do with a SIPOC is a simple exploration of the process. We're not getting deep into the process steps and a deeper understanding of the process of the inputs and the outputs of the process and the suppliers and the customers of the process. Why is that so important? Well, because when we're thinking about the challenges or the issues that we find in a process, we want to know what the process is supposed to produce. That is an output. If we know what it's supposed to produce, we can start to ask, how do we know that it's producing that the way the customer wants? Additionally, we know that a process needs things, right? I don't know if I'm making a copy of something, I need a copying machine, I need a piece of paper, I need an input file. Like all of those things have to go into the process. And if any of them aren't working, it's a problem. And then each one of those inputs has some suppliers, right? And they're responsible for supplying me the inputs. And those outputs have customers, and those customers can tell me if my outputs are any good. So, anyways, that is the basic understanding of a SIPOC. And the simplest way I can share a typical SIPOC with you is a hiring process. I think all of us are familiar in one way, shape, or form with hiring processes, and this is just what I would call a list kind of style SIPOC, and that's maybe the first thing that we'll kind of come back to and talk about there. But the list style SIPOC says, okay, I've got outputs that are hiring decisions, offer, and start dates. I have a set of processes. Again, I'm not super interested in the process steps. I want to know what they are, but I'm not going to get deep into, well, where are the decision points and where are the feedback loops and those sorts of things. I'm just going, hey, I'm looking from a new hiring request boundary to a decision. And we know that we have to request a new hire, we have to interview, we have to select a candidate, we have to get some decisions from the candidate. Okay, cool. Very simple. But what is more important is the outputs of this process. Well, they're not just a hire decision, they're an offer, they're a start date. And I have customers of those things. A hiring manager wants to know the hiring decision. They may need to know the start date. Well, they definitely need to know start date, and so on, right? So I can start to draw these linkages between the outputs and the customers such that I can understand what the customer is looking for. And we'll talk about why that's important in a minute. On the input side, in order to do these things, I need a position request, a job description. I need to conduct interviews. So I need some kind of interview process. Maybe that's a procedural document. I need a final selection. These are things that the hiring manager is probably going to give me. Human resources has to give me, there you go, there's the interview process. Candidate resumes, offer letters, so on and so forth. So those are all inputs to run my process. Now, again, this is kind of a simple list method, which means I'm just thinking about the broad categories of outputs, the broad categories of inputs, and I'm just listing them out. I'm usually going to do this, and so this is how I use this type of tool when I'm starting out a new project and I have a new project team, and it's probably our kickoff or maybe the second time we're meeting. I'm going to use a simple SIPOC like this to get everyone the basic understanding of what's going on, right? This isn't a deep dive, right? This is just simple. Does everyone understand that these are the things that happen? And then I'm going to go, and so, hey, hey, folks, what's what's this process outputting? What is its purpose? And they're going to go, well, yeah, we need a hiring decision, Matt. We need an offer. And start. Okay, cool. Who, who are those things going to? Who's important to? Who's the customer? Oh, well, the hiring manager, the human resource. Okay, great. And then I'm going to say, okay, and what are the things that this process needs in order for it to function? And they're going to go, well, we need a position request, we need a job description, and they're going to list all these things out. And then I'm going to say, well, who's providing those things? So we're just creating this list. Why is that so useful? A few reasons, right? Like I said already, it's helpful or useful because I'm getting the team aligned around what process we're looking at, and so that we all have a similar understanding. But more important, we're going to start to see if we're missing anyone from the team. Because I pulled a cross section of folks together, and oh, if I forgot to bring in human resources, that's going to jump out at us. And we're going to go, hey, let's make sure we bring in human resources. Likewise, if I forgot to, well, I'm probably not going to bring the candidate into this one, but you can imagine, right, where an input, I'm going to look at an input and go, oh, I need someone that represents maintenance or this part of the engineering organization because this is one of the inputs. And so we can make sure we have the right team. Um, I also can start to think about what data and information I need to collect as part of the project. So it's a really great, and actually, when we teach this in CI Mastermind, we teach it as a scoping tool, as a tool to help us kind of scope out the boundaries of the work, who needs to be involved, what information are we going to need to go collect. Do we have a interview process? Oh my gosh, we don't even have one. There's a issue right there. Let's take a look at our offer letter. Does the offer letter state what the start date is going to be, or does it request a start date? Because if I'm not getting a start date, I know that maybe there could be something wrong in how I'm making that offer. So I'm starting to, in the very early stages of a project, when I use a SIPOC like this, I'm starting to put the boundaries around what needs to happen, what information that I need. And by the way, I can do a SIPOC like this, I don't know, I mean, I could probably put something together in 15 minutes. Usually it takes about probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes for a, typical process to put something like that together. Nonetheless, that is really fast if you think about coming up with what are the boundaries of my project and making sure that we're all aligned. So those are some of the things that are really important to me and why I like to use SIPOC. Now, I mentioned there's two paths, and so I'm going to jump to another picture here. And this is a different kind of SIPOC diagram that we use. I don't know. I call it line by line SIPOC. There might be a better term out there. That would be another one. If you've got it, share it with me, because I always like to improve my terminology. But nonetheless, this is a template that we use when we're doing a line by line SIPOC. Okay, what's the difference line by line? Well, and actually, let me flip back again. Where these are kind of lists, and I'm looking, frankly, what I'm typically looking at is outputs, then customers. I'm kind of thinking through the process, then inputs, and then suppliers. That's how I go through it with the group. And we're just brainstorming this stuff, and I'm just writing it down, or people are giving me post-it notes. In this case, we are tasking one of our engineers to go and explore the process and do oftentimes like a sit-down interview with people who are all involved in this process. Now, I don't want to jump into what this specific process, and frankly, it's probably kind of small, so I'm not sure you're going to be able to completely read it. But the point is that what I want you to understand is this is designed so that we look line by line at each process step and make sure that each process step has its own output and has its own customer, and each process step has its own input and has its own customer. So you can see registering complaints via email, right? And the output is a registered complaint. Well, that's the process step, registering complaints. The registered complaint, that output, is now the input for the next process. So hopefully right there you can kind of see the power, because it creates this thread throughout. So we can see the linkages between the process steps. And frankly, if it's not clear what the output of one process step is, or what happens even more often is the output's kind of stranded, it doesn't go anywhere. That tells me there's some gap, something missing in the process. Now, this is a much deeper dive than that simple list SIPOC. I'm using this more in like the analysis phase, especially in very complicated processes where there's lots of handoffs between different departments, and I want to try and understand where some of those gaps in those handoffs are occurring. This methodology is really powerful for that. And so that's how we use it. And this is not, again, this is going to take much more time. Like when we do something like this, you're probably talking a week easily to put it together. Not that you're working a week the whole time, but scheduling meetings with people, talking with folks, following up, validating what you learned. You're going to spend, a week duration, I would say, putting something like that together. But it's extremely insightful in finding those gaps. And the other thing, and you can see here as well, we have output metric, we have customer metric, we have input metric, we have supplier metric. Guess what? That's because when we're getting to this level of detail, we're asking ourselves, okay, what do we want to measure? Now, not every one of these steps necessarily needs a measurement, but it's a call out so we can start thinking about it and deciding, okay, this step right here is really crucial. Maybe it's how long it takes to do this complaint registration. Okay, we should get a output measurement for that. And is that output measurement that's useful to us internally, is that meaningful to the customer such that I should tell them about it? So again, I don't want to go and teach you this whole thing. What I want you to understand is one, SIPOCs, super powerful. I use them typically at the beginning of a project and in that generation of alignment and understanding the boundaries of the process. Uh, and then I may use it again later on to go deep, to get deeper analysis and really understand where some of the challenges are coming from. So that's SIPOC. We teach it as part of our programming, and I'd be very interested to hear how you utilize SIPOC and if you applied some of this and what you found useful. Thank you.